All right, good evening. We know time is valuable, so we appreciate you being here, and we'd like you to please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance to start our meeting.
Yes, one nation under God, indivisible, with
All right, thank you. Item 1.3 is approval of the agenda.
Yeah, I had an item to bring up there. We have an item on the consent agenda that I had a few things to say about that I'd like to bring out as an agenda item, the attorney-client fee contract.
All right. We can move that and discuss that individually during that item. All right,
With that said, move to approve the agenda.
all right. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and with the removal of that, are there any other questions or discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda with that minor change, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the agenda is approved. Item number 1.4 is introduction of our student board member, Ashlee Sandoval. And we'll have Mr. Anderson do that introduction.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Ashlee, and welcome to our school board meeting. Great to have you here. So I'm just going to give a little intro on Ashlee so we all know about what an amazing young individual she is. So Ashlee is a senior at Elko High School, and she's very involved. She's currently involved in Drama Club, the Thespian Society, USITT. I'm going to have to ask what that acronym stands for.
It's a tech club for Thespian Society. Our president is Casey Bennett and our co-president is Justino Mackay.
Awesome, thank you. In addition to those three, she's also an art club. She's in the National Society of High School Scholars, and she also does poetry out loud. And so last year, Ashlee actually was the winner for the entire state of Nevada in Poetry Out Loud, and she went to Washington, D.C. to represent Nevada in the national competition. That was in May, right, that you went there?
Yes, it was in May.
Okay, awesome. So Ashlee's plan after high school is to pursue a business degree at a prestigious university and apply for an international management program. It's awesome to have a student of your caliber on the what's this thing called again? On the board today. The dais, that's what it is. To be on the board with us today. So thank you so much for being here and lending your student voice to all of our topics.
Yeah, Ashlee, thank you for being here, and yeah, congratulations on all your accomplishments, and we are excited to hear what you do in the future. All right, we'll move on. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. If you'd like to say something, we'd love to hear you.
Thank you for having me. It's a real opportunity to be here.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to item 1.5, receive a presentation from the Southside Teacher Classroom Innovations.
Hi, I'm T.W. Cunningham. I'm the principal at Southside Elementary. We got a couple of presentations tonight, student presentations. I'll have Mrs. Carr, our fourth grade teacher, and Miss Leland, our first grade teacher, kind of talk you through it and introduce our kids to you.
Hi there, I'm Audrey Carr. I teach fourth grade, as TW said, at Southside. This evening, we wanted to share with you our emotions journal that is being used throughout different classrooms around Southside. This idea came together after joining the Portrait of a Nevada Learner last year and attending the NASS conference in Tahoe last June. TW has some flyers here too, if you're interested in look at them at some time. It just kind of shows you the members of the team and kind of our purpose behind what we did. Portrait of a Nevada Learner was designed to help define the roles schools can play in preparing students with the mindsets, skills, and knowledge essential to living good lives within their own community. Our Portrait of Nevada Southside cohort has created a way for our students to share their emotions the minute they walk in the door, and then again before they leave school. We feel that this is not only going to help us to know our child, or I should say our students better, but it's also going to allow each child and teacher to connect deeper with emotions and the success of academics. So today I have two lovely ladies that would like to share their AM emotion and then a PM emotion, just to kind of see how they start their day, especially with our new 4-day school week. And then they'll show at the end of the day what they're feeling in the PM. So you can kind of see the difference between the two. So I first have Brinley Cunningham.
In the morning, I am tired because I stay up until like 10:01 because I like to watch TV.
Okay, and then you can say in the afternoon.
And in the afternoon, I wrote, today I'm feeling happy because today was a really good day and after school, I play with my puppies.
And then do you want to show them real quick, just a brief overview of what you do? You draw your emotion and then your picture. Sure. So she'll just kind of show you real quick that in the morning, they have to show the emotion, the emoji that represents who they are with the word. And then at the bottom, they draw a picture of how that moment looks to them. So that's in the AM and in the PM.
Rosalinda Quintero. Today I am feeling happy because today we have PE. That is my favorite special. He ran like 2 laps. Today I am feeling tired because it's a long day from work. Maya Richardson. I am feeling tired because I stayed up late doing my homework after my soccer practice. And I was up until like 9 p.m. So I got like 6 hours of sleep. So I am tired. I am feeling happy because I am going to see Miss Carr at the presentation place at 5:30 tonight. So I am happy.
So those are just some examples of what we do in 4th grade. And again, I have other teachers in kinder who have now moved to 1st. We have some teachers in 2nd and another teacher in 4th that's also doing something very similar. So we're trying to bring this across the grade levels within the school and maybe over time within the district. We're just trying to work with that social emotional and connecting it to academics. That's really our focus to see how it's going to play out. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Leland. I'm a 1st grade teacher at Southside Elementary, and I have Aiden Lewis and Amelia Addy with me here. And we are presenting on a science unit, structure to function. Do I have to talk into the mic the whole time? I don't know what to do. So this was with the help of Nevada Desert Research Institute in Reno. They send these things called green boxes that have lots of STEM activities and really hands-on engaging units for the kids. So it was a 3-day unit. Day 1. I don't know if hold on, let's see. So Aiden, do you want to talk about what you did day 1?
No.
So day one, they had to design a structure. We talked about the Las Vegas flooding, the recent flooding that was happening, and they got plexiglass and tape, and they had to design a structure. Do you want to talk about what happened to your structure?
It didn't work out as well as I thought. So we just stopped doing it and did a different design. And we didn't have enough time, so it wasn't finished.
And then Amelia, do you want to tell them about your design? On this day?
It was like a house. There was 2 roofs. It leaked in a little bit. That's it.
Okay, and then day 2, we did these booklets. There's 4 different types of birds. Do you want to tell them about your booklet, Aiden?
Yeah.
Just look at your booklet.
The first bird is a vulture.
What's the second bird?
The second bird is a puffin.
A puffin?
The third bird is a duck. The last bird is a hummingbird.
Each of those are.
Each of them are insect eaters, wading birds, nutcrackers, and nectar eaters.
Okay, and then the third, so they were pretty much studying how the structure is the piece and the function, it depends on what the bird eats. So he has some drawings there, and then we labeled his booklet structure and function depending on, well, the beak is the structure and then the function was whatever they were doing with their beak to eat. And then on the third day, what did we do, guys?
Nest.
And what did we use to build the nests?
We used fake little grass things, sticks, and Play-Doh. And then we got to make our own.
Okay, and what do we use for the eggs?
Ping pong ball.
And that was it. Thank you. Good job, guys.
Just a couple of early things taking place at Southside Elementary right now. We're off to a great start of the school year, and we appreciate you guys having us here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another round of applause for the first. All right, we love to have you guys here. Thank you for your smiles and for sharing things you're doing in school. We love to see the adventures you have with your teachers and your classmates all the time. So thanks for coming. You guys can come back anytime. All right. Thank you. All right, we will move to item 1.6, input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 consecutive minutes. A speaker's time may not be reserved, divided, apportioned, or deferred. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been included specifically on an agenda as an item upon which action will be taken. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment? Okay, I know we have a few to read, but we'll take those in the audience first.
Okay. Not sure if this falls.
The button you'll see green.
Not sure if this falls under the criteria that you just set forth, but I'll give it a shot. I'm not sure how I'm gonna advocate for 100 people, but in 3 minutes, but I'm gonna try. So my name is Juan Granio. I'm a school psychologist here in Elko County. Some of you know me more than others, maybe not by choice. But so I wanted to bring something to your attention. So special education is running into a problem. The number of students in special education requiring services and the services that they require are outweighing what we're capable of handling, basically. Not due to incompetence, but just sheer workloads. So the number of students, sorry, lost my spot. So consequently, this increase is basically making it to where our caseloads are approaching up to 2 times what our recommended caseloads are by the state or by our national boards that kind of dictate that ratio. So going up to 2 times is making it basically impossible to meet some of the demands of our jobs. So as a school psych, my suggested ratio is 1 to 800 students of overall population, students in special education, outside of special education. Unfortunately, my current ratio is 1 to 1,700 across 3 schools. So at twice my recommended ratio, carrying out the responsibilities and the day-to-day of my job is becoming basically impossible, right? So I want to give you guys an analogy. So in a regular education classroom with a regular teacher, the max is supposed to be 26 students, right? So at 2 times the ratio, that'd be like putting 52 kids in there and asking that teacher to make sure that they all succeed while grading, lesson planning, behavior management, all the above, right? It's basically impossible. If a teacher can do it, I can guarantee you that teacher doesn't want to do it for any number of years consecutively. So these high caseloads are basically sort of forcing us to start triaging, choosing which kids get services, not services, but like attention, basically, right? Which SIT meetings I can go to, can't go to, have to kind of start managing that. So basically we're triaging at some point. And so you have to start deciding which kids get disserviced in order to service certain kids, which is an ethical dilemma that none of us should be facing. So steps have been taken to make us more efficient, like use of technology for testing. Admin, our site admin help us out a lot by blocking off scheduled times for case managers to test, to write IEPs, to hold meetings, whatnot. So they are helping us out, but at this point, it's still not enough. We're getting to the point where we just need more people to be able to meet the demands that are put on us, right? So high caseloads are causing more of a turnover in special education. We're losing highly effective SPED teachers that are just transferring over to the gen ed environment because they have their license. And of course we need them too, so they can jump over if they want to. Just because it's getting too overwhelming. I have 3 at my 3 schools right now that have transferred over recently. And it's getting to the point where new ARL teachers that are seeking this SPED licensure route are also getting their gen ed licensure in just assuming that they're gonna leave, right? Is that my 3 minutes? Okay. I encourage you guys to read the rest of it. Couldn't get through all of that, sorry. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, please, Cassie, if you give them my contact info, if you guys have any questions or concerns or anything, follow up.
Thank you. We
Thanks.
appreciate that. Is there anyone else in the room that wishes to make a comment? All right, we do. Oh, go ahead. Come on up, please.
This is on the SPED ed note, just a disclaimer, I'm a horrible public speaker, but I'm gonna try. My name is Carissa Kessler and I have 3 children enrolled in the Elko County School District. All 3 of them have been prescribed IEPs and our middle child has successfully graduated off of hers. Our primary physician, who is certified to diagnose autism, diagnosed our youngest daughter as autistic and forwarded her records to the district for her to receive services. The Special Services Department did not accept our doctor's diagnosis and has stated that they would need to conduct their own observation testing. Unfortunately, this is not the first time that Special Services Department has not accepted an external recommendation. When my daughter was 2, Nevada Early Intervention Services tested her at a 75% deficit in more than 2 areas and forwarded that information to the district. The Special Services Department did not accept NEIS's findings either. Last year, my daughter was enrolled in the district's preschool program. The teacher contacted me with concerns of her being nonverbal, and I formally requested testing from the district. The Special Services Department was legally required to test her within 45 days, instead screened her more than 4 months later, declared that she did not meet the standards of an IEP despite being nearly nonverbal, wetting herself regularly, and pulling on her hair to the point of pulling it out. After spending all of last year trying to get help for my daughter, we approached this year with renewed hope. This was because Dr. Higbee told us to come back to him with a diagnosis, which we did. However, upon presenting it, we were told that the district would reevaluate her again. We had no choice but to accept that, though we were pleased when Dr. Higbee told us that our variance was granted and she was registered at Southside with him providing the teacher's name. Conversely, following that meeting, her school registration was inexplicably misplaced and our requested variance to Southside was rejected with the reasoning that the school was full, which according to the superintendent's report later this evening, Southside has 56 less children than last year. This seems to be clumsy record keeping at best and retaliatory at worst. I have now met with special services personnel at least 5 times, had no fewer than a dozen additional phone calls and email communications, and have spoken with Dr. Higbee at least 3 times. I requested a meeting with Mr. Anderson, and his response was that it would be highly unusual for me to be involved with decisions being made about evaluations and diagnosis for a student to qualify for special education. He went on to say, it was my understanding that you have an outside diagnosis for autism, but our staff has had one evaluation result in a difference of opinion, and we are awaiting a second evaluation from several different evaluators to compare. It has now been a month and we have heard nothing about additional testing. I've tried to resolve this through the proper procedure. I am approaching you tonight to make sure that the board is aware that the opinion of medical professionals are being challenged by uncertified personnel and to inform you of my family's situation, as I am sure that we are not the only ones experiencing these difficulties.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I know we have some public comment to read. Susan, you have one?
Yes, I do. This is from Cynthia Nieces. I do understand the reasoning behind item 2.9, but take exception to the paragraph which reprimands teachers for not using designated pronouns until that can actually be deemed intentional bullying. Plus, I think there is a need to have an approved list to pull from due to a possible endless supply of what is a myriad of pronouns students might want to be called. And concern is that most of the time and otherwise, their name would be more important to use. In addition, I find it offensive that the district would single these students out and ascribe to placating some, but definitely not all, while also allowing confusion in the classroom between students, teachers, and substitutes. I, for one, would seek immunity from charges because it would be unintentional. False accusations will render this unenforceable and litigious. In addition, the second reason for reprimand on bullying of discrimination under this class is for any other reason. Whom deems what the reason is, and is it associated with the alleged inappropriate use of a pronoun? What are the ramifications of these alleged charges? Has the school's attorney vetted this proposal on additional policy? Also, I have one other comment. This is in regards to the 4-day week. I was of the understanding that the Fridays would be dedicated to enrichment. So far, enrichment consists of free lunch with no guidance given to parents to choose from desired enrichment opportunities, studies, or activities for the kids, and it is given during lunch, and lunch would be the main activity. Our students don't need a free lunch, can't eat the school lunch, and is a detraction from what could be extra tutoring or additional studies they don't get during their day. The new day, which is an hour extra, is spent with 2 additional recesses. Thank you for letting me enter comments as I am unable to attend tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Susan, for reading that. Did we have one other one? Matt? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. All right, is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment before we move on? All right, and we do appreciate you being here. Item 2.1 is receipt, review, and possible approval of the Elko County School District Test Security Plan for school year 2023-2024. All right, Mr. Anderson, would you like to give an intro on that one?
Oh, yeah, sure. So this is an annual item of which I am still compiling a list for all of you. You will see that it's a rather lengthy list, but it's an annual item we take care of. Ray Smith, our Director of School Improvement, is responsible for updating our district test security plan. As you'll see within those documents, sites also have their own test security plan to make sure they comply with the requirements of both our district test security plan and the state of Nevada requirements, which is an appendix in our own security plan as well. The other two documents are, one is the assessment calendar, which comes out every year, just with exactly what it sounds like. It's the dates for all of our testing, state testing, and then the Nevada State System of Assessments attachment is a broken down explanation of what each of those various assessments we have are, because there are quite a few and they're very grade specific, and so it breaks that down so people can understand what those are all for. And it is a requirement for our district to have this both in place and available and communicated out to our students, staff, parents, everyone by September 30th. So we have all of that documentation here. If you have any questions, Ray, I'm sure will be happy to answer them. I can also answer them as well, as I had to put one of these together myself a little while back. This is Lydia, by the way. She's a new reporter for the Free Press. So we're going to let her take pictures. But feel free to ask questions.
Okay, any questions from the board?
How are the students notified? Is it like an email they get or just from their teachers in class?
So our understanding is that having these documents posted on our website in an easy to find place is sufficient notification to the public that it's there. It's on is it on the curriculum website, the portion of our district website? Yes, we have our curriculum department, and there are links to all of these documents there as well.
I thought I'd try to be like Aiden and say, no, I don't want to talk about this, but that's not an option, I guess. Yes, it's on the curriculum website, or will be pending approval tonight.
And on individual school sites too, or it just needs to be one-stop shopping? Is it just on the district, or will each school have their own?
That's a good question.
I don't believe we posted on the
I
individual
think
school
historically
sites.
it's just been on the district's page.
Is it something we could also put on the app? Because then everybody can pick their school, and if you just stick it on the app, then everybody will be able to see it, right?
I think so. I guess I'd defer that to Kayla and staff.
That's just
there, but
throwing that out
yeah,
there.
just
That's-
make every attempt to make it as accessible as possible. Something I'll note.
Other questions from the board on this item? Okay, if not, how would you like to proceed?
I move to approve the Elko County School District Test Security Plan for school year 2023 to 2024.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Item 2.2 is receipt, review, and possible acceptance of the bids for the FY24 bus purchase.
Yeah, so as you will probably remember from some of Julie's awesome finance presentations, we only get funded from the state in accordance with how much need we demonstrate for transportation based on how much we spend on transportation. And so we have been making a diligent effort to replace the aging and falling apart buses in our fleet, so that as the bienniums roll, we are more demonstrating that need. So we, for this fiscal year, we had buses on order. However, we were recently informed that those buses would not make it to us by June 30th of 2024, which means that would be another year that we are not funded for buses because we wouldn't receive those during that fiscal year. So we went back out to bid, or sorry, yes, we went back out to bid for companies who, with the requirement of we would have to have these guaranteed by June 30th of 2024. And so the attachment here has the company that said they can meet those requirements. And so this is approval to accept that bid so we can both get new buses here and help our funding situation improve as the years go on.
All right, any questions for the board from the board on this one?
Madam Chair, if I may. Mr. Anderson or Mr. Canning, I'm assuming the BBCV 3507 is the body types. That would be a front engine bus as opposed to most of the flat buses that we're used to seeing. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a conventional is what they call this type of bus. It's the ones that actually have the engine out in front of the bus, the nose on them.
And we've got a few of those in the more rural areas, but not as many in the.
We actually don't have any longer. We got rid of those a long time ago, but we've had them in the past, but yeah, they were run more of our rural areas from the smaller front engine buses. Yeah.
Okay. And is there any difference in training on driving a bus that now has an extra X amount of feet between the driver and?
Not a whole lot, just.
Be aware of, you've got to know.
And then the front engine buses, typically why we use those in the rural areas is they actually have a better turning radius and are more maneuverable. So that's kind of the benefit of those and why we use them in those areas.
Great. Is there any difference in maintenance of the fleet with changing these? I mean, I know we already have some Bluebirds, so.
No, not really, because we requested the same engine type and transmission were already running in the other ones, so won't be a whole lot of difference.
Okay.
Yeah, most of the specs are, the running gear is pretty much identical, just the body is a little different, that's all.
Okay. Last thing is more of a comment. It looked like we had budgeted I think either 1.25 or 1.125 originally for 5 buses. This is coming in at 900,000. So
Correct.
Some pretty significant savings. We appreciate that. Sorry, Julie.
Yeah, that's the difference between the type C and the type D that we typically run.
But
It's
that's
just overall
also,
savings.
that budget line can be for trucks and plows
Yeah.
and vehicles, so we need more than just buses. So
Gotcha.
that budget line goes to more than just the 5 buses.
Yeah, we had several vehicles on there too, for replacing in the fleet, the light vehicles.
So is that gonna leave you with enough money for the other things?
Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, big, for going that we can actually get them, yes. Working on, we do have got some good news that some of the light vehicles are actually getting scheduled to build or showing up, so.
And the 5 vehicles that Mr. Anderson had previously mentioned that we're not going to be able to get before June, are those still on order and then we'll just pay for them in the
Correct, those will be
fiscal?
for the next fiscal year, yeah, the 5, those will be the special needs buses, the ones with the wheelchair lifts. As we have 5 of those that are 23, will be 24 years old then, that we're gonna replace, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Other questions from the board? All right, if not, how would you like to proceed?
Madam Chair, move to approve or accept the bids for the fiscal year 24 bus purchase.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.3 is receipt, review, and possible approval of a bus surplus sale.
The board buyeth and the board selleth. So we have some buses that are no longer usable and so when they get to that point, we do a surplus sale. So Seth can answer any questions you have about that, but there's a little bit of information there, but we've pretty much Frankenstein these things until they can't be Frankenstein anymore, and the sale of these types of items, usually doesn't generate a ton of money, but because they're if they still ran well, we'd still be using them, but they're at a point where it's time to get rid of them and of course bring in new buses.
Any questions from the board on this one?
just being a smart aleck, but maybe we could front load this a little bit better next time to have it occur around Burning Man. I'm just thinking.
Would be nice. That's a good idea.
We don't need buses with Elko County School District stuck out in the mud.
Yeah, to
Matt.
make sure we
Take the name
scrape
off.
that off.
Take the name off.
Yes.
Madam Chair, move to approve the surplus, bus surplus sale.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that motion carries. Item 2.4 is receipt, review, and possible approval to go into design for the heating system retrofit at Elko High School Junior Senior Building. Okay. Looks like Stephen's here to tell us everything we need. Any questions for Stephen?
Yeah, so essentially what we want to do is pipe in the hydronic system. It's a water system that goes through the entire high school. We have a VRF system. The acronym really just means it's using refrigerant to cool the air or heat the air. We found out that it's really efficient in southern locations, not specifically this area right here for the heating aspect of it. But we have the geo lines in place as well as the boilers that we utilize for heating that school in the winter time. So what we want to do is just repipe it, put new heating coils in that will pump hot water through them and bring heat to the building. So we've just faced some challenges this last year. It was unprecedented for the winter, but that was typical of Elko area. It just hasn't been that way for a long time. So this is more preventative, preemptive type maintenance planning. The system that we have in that building specifically just doesn't operate well in the winter time here.
All right, any questions from the board?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Stephen, this is similar to what we just approved a couple of weeks ago in Jackpot, correct? It's a similar design if I was reading through the.
Very similar Jackpot. We would be installing electric heating coils. In this case, we've got geo lines there that could potentially be used in the future once we fix those. And but for the time being, we would just utilize the boilers, the steam boilers and heat exchangers to heat the building.
How quickly can you change from when the citywide geothermal gets repaired, if ever? How quickly can you switch that back and forth?
Almost instantaneously. Turn the valve on.
And if I recall correctly, board approved capital projects, and this was listed, I think, as number 5 with a purchase price of $685, or I wish $685,000. So the 54,000 is just a little bit above that, and that's for the design. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions from the board on this one? All right, how would you like to move forward?
I move the board approve the Elko High School Junior and Senior Building Heating System Design.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. All right, we have a motion, a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Item 2.5 is, thanks, Stephen, discussion and consideration to appoint an ECSD Board of Trustee to the Oversight Panel for school district capital improvement projects pursuant to section 5.5 of AB 519 of the 2023 Nevada legislative session. This is for possible action. All right, Mr. Anderson, you gotta give us an intro on this one as well.
Yes, I can. I won't read the background information word for word, but just as a reminder with AB 519 funds. So there's a couple of ways funds. We were definitely getting funds to the tune of $64.5 million to build a new school in Hawaii. And we're definitely going to get somewhere between 1 and 25 cents from the county for the furthering of capital improvement projects for our school facilities. So with those funds comes a requirement in this bill to have an oversight panel for all of those funds, and specifically those funds. It's a review and recommend type panel for all transactions and all actions taken using that money. And so the panel consists of 5 members. A detailed description is there in the agenda attachment. The school board is responsible for 2 of those appointments. We're discussing one of them right now, and then in the next item, we'll discuss the other. So this one specifically is by wording in the bill, supposed to be one of you, the 7 board members or board trustees. So our board's task for this one, if you want to do it tonight, is to appoint one among you to be on this oversight panel. On September 5th, the county, I believe it was September 5th, the county, I remember it was the 6th, I take it back, September 6th. The county appointed their commissioner to be on the panel, and they discussed their other appointment as well. And so we are working in conjunction with them to make sure we have this panel ready to go for when we receive money, which should be coming soon. And we just want to be ready to go, so we're not wasting any time. So at this point, it's up for y'all to discuss, make recommendations, etc. And I'm here to, yeah, if you have more questions about AB 519, or if you feel like it's relevant to the conversation, I'll be happy to chime in.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Let's start with any questions from the board on this item.
I was just wondering who the county appointed.
The county appointed Commissioner John Carr as their, their designee. That's the word.
Who's the other one that you were sort of mentioned?
The other person, so just like we have another one who we get to appoint, the person that they will also appoint is a member who is a resident of the county and has experience in the financing of public works projects. So that's the other person. No, the only name that was mentioned in that meeting was Jeff Zander, who I think we're all familiar with. But they have an application process that they're going to follow. But I believe Commissioner Carr threw out the name of Jeff Zander as someone who is obviously very experienced in financing public works projects.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other questions from the board or other discussion?
My husband will probably be mad at me for throwing myself out there for this, but I'm currently on the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. John Carr is also on that committee. It has representatives from all of the different communities in the district on it. And he's the county commissioner that's on that committee. I feel like it would make the most sense to have me be on this committee also, just because then I would be able to take the feedback that I'm getting in the committee that I'm currently on. And I think it would be good to be able to utilize that feedback for this committee also.
Thanks, Brooke. Any other?
I'd also like to throw my name out there. I know you're connected with that too as well, but having an outside perspective too, or we can share knowledge back and forth too, but I'm interested in being part of this board as well, so. Which muddies the water, I know.
No, it does not muddy the water. This is important that we discuss and you know, we're able to appoint somebody to serve on this oversight committee. All right, is there any other people that want to throw their name out there? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody jumping up and down. So I think it's important to recognize, again, this is an oversight panel. Just for anyone who hasn't read the background information, and just a reminder, as Mr. Anderson said, we'll have a board member and we will appoint someone who has experience in the building of school facilities. The district will do that. And so anyway, let's talk more about what we want to do with appointing a board member. Any other thoughts or consideration from the board on this item?
I think Brooke brings up a good point on having the existing committee ties. I think one of the things that we run into sometimes though is the same people continue to do the same things. In one way, it's almost disappointing that Commissioner Carr is on both because that gives fewer interactions that we have with our elected officials across the boards. So having another school board member being able to interact and have yet one more point of contact is a good, I think is a good idea. So I can understand where Josh is coming from, and I think that might be a good idea as well. Don't know that I'm quite ready to throw a hat in there, you know, or throw my my weight behind any particular trustee at this point, but I think sometimes we hear that it's the same people making the same choices, the same decisions. And actually, I do think that going in a different direction and having multiple people might represent our board better and might represent the district better. So I think Josh might be a good idea for this.
Other comments from the board?
I would just keep going back to the last one when we did the approval on the food sciences lab for Spring Creek, and this committee first came up. And one thing that we talked about was that it really is just an advisory committee. It really doesn't have any actual decision-making power, if you will. They're just to make recommendations and so on. So that's just something to keep in mind with that.
All right, any other thoughts?
I'm thinking along the same lines that Matt, so I won't repeat what he said.
Okay. All right. Well, I will just say, Brooke, I appreciate you serving on those committees, and I appreciate everybody who puts time in on this board just in general. I think either Brooke or Josh would be fantastic. I do have a very similar opinion as far as I do think it's good to spread the load a little bit. Excuse me. And so, although I know you would both be fantastic, I do think this would be a good idea to have another board member involved at that level as well. So, any other comments? Do we want to, well, is it, Adriana, any thoughts? How would we like to proceed here? It sounds like we kind of have a consensus, but we ought to have a motion.
I'm actually just kind of curious by the wording of this. Is this up to us or is it up to you as the president?
Well, technically it is up to me. I can just appoint somebody. However, I always think it's best where this is the Board of Trustees. This is not Teresa's board. I think it's best to bring it to the board and get your consensus, because I value your opinion. I value you being here. You have no idea how much I value you being here. So I am glad to always have input. So yes, I could just say I appoint you, whoever I want to appoint, but I do appreciate hearing the thoughts and opinions of everyone on the board.
Thank you for that.
I thank you for that courtesy as well. Madam Chair, then I'll attempt a motion here. I move that the board recommend that the member of the panel, who is a member of the Board of Trustees of the school district in the county, be Josh Byers, and that the president so appoint.
Okay. Do we have a second? Second. All right, is there any other discussion? All right, I will take a motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And the chair votes aye, and that is my vote of appointment, I suppose, as well. All right, well, congratulations, Josh, and I know you and Brooke will have lots of things to discuss as well with all of the adventures we have ahead. With that being said, we'll move on to item 2.6, discussion and consideration to make recommendations and/or solicit resumes for appointment to the Oversight panel for the same purpose. I won't read all of that again. All right.
All right.
Strategy.
Yeah, so the background information and the content within the description there for public content is not, it's almost identical. The only difference here is, well, so this member, I'll read who the member is. So one member who is a resident of the county and has experience in the building of school facilities, appointed by the president of the Board of Trustees of the school district in the county. So given the wording, you have a couple of options. I suppose you all could just discuss some names and she could make an appointment. We did put here that interested applicants may send their resume to Cassie Gray. As I mentioned, the county commission has an application We didn't feel the need to put a whole application together, but felt like someone submitting, someone who was interested, submitting a resume of their qualifications as someone with experience in the building of school facilities could do so just by submitting that resume. So you can either just, you can discuss and throw names out if you got them. You can also just announce to the public that we're taking resumes and move on. You have a couple of options here.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
I know that in certain other government entities, you have to be careful with naming names without giving them due process of being able to be present, et cetera. But I feel comfortable in proposing that if we do not go with an applicant, and if you're looking for an appointment this evening, that Miss Jennifer Roberson could be a fit for this. Mrs. Roberson is the project manager for Armaza Construction and has had a decade or more of construction experience. I feel that she can be independent, but yet she also still has connections back to both the county and the district. And so I think that makes for a faster hitting the ground running type of approach to this. And she happened also to be the name that Commissioner Carr had recommended, though he was reminded that it wasn't the county commission's recommendation or approval or purview to approve or to recommend. So I think that having a name that's already familiar with both parties may be helpful. And I would submit that she would be qualified for that if we choose to appoint this evening.
All right, thank you, Matt. Any other recommendations or discussion on this item?
I would just ask, is that somebody that's already aware of this, or is that going to be because last I checked, this is a volunteer type.
She's aware of SB 519 because of her position. She keeps track of the legislation that comes through that affects building, and as a employer of a local, as a employee of a local construction outfit, a $64.5 million project in the county is something that she was very much aware of.
I'm speaking more towards aware of our
being able
opening that we need.
Right. Yeah. So I did visit with her about this. I asked her if this would be something she would be interested in. She said that, yeah, she'd be happy to consider this. I don't know that, and because she's not here this evening, I don't know that she's going to say absolutely 100%, but I do feel comfortable, as I mentioned earlier, mentioning her name because I don't feel that she would have a concern with that.
Thanks, Matt. Any other recommendations from the board?
I think she would be a great choice if she's willing to do it. But I can say I really don't know others that I would consider, so.
Yeah, I don't have anyone else I would consider either. So yeah, I'm right there with you. So, but I know she should do a great job with that. So
yeah,
if we can at least reach out to her.
I think obviously Stephen's a good choice, but I think at this point we should try to keep distance between an employee being on this board, and we should try to go outside of the district. So I apologize. I should have started with that. Not that you aren't qualified, but that was the reason I got.
I would think on this, just like any other, that we put that out there and then look at it the next meeting and see who wants to throw their hat in the ring for that, especially and approach her and let her know, we'd be interested to hear from her. And anyone else, if we can get that out there, put it up for a couple of weeks and then make our decision next meeting, I think would be prudent.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff.
What's the will of the board?
Is the sooner we get all the people together, the sooner things go, right? So what's happening with the other ones that need to be appointed?
So yeah, there are still two other positions outside of the two that have officially been appointed at this point. And sorry, three. I was saying two, not including this one. And one one of those, I guess 4 of those are all in motion with our discussion here tonight. One of those is, I'll just read it as it's written. The last one that we have not talked about is one member who is a member of a federally recognized Indian tribe or nation located in whole or in part within the boundaries of the county, appointed by the executive head of the federally recognized Indian tribe or nation. So that one has yet to be sorted out as well. So I guess, yes, the sooner we get everything in place, the better. This panel is supposed to be, the onus for putting this panel together is on the county commission. And so they will, we've been in discussions about that 5th member as well, but it'll ultimately be their responsibility to make sure we solicit that from one of our, because we have multiple tribal nations that exist in our county and tribal leaderships. And so how they will sort that out, we're working on that, trying to figure out a good plan there. But the county will make sure that gets done to complete the panel.
Is there a legal reason we cannot make an appointment within 2 weeks and have a 2-week notice, a period of notice?
Like why we would need to go longer than 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion if there's no other discussion. Madam Chair, I move that we put notice of intent to appoint using the language approved within SB 519 for appointment for recommended appointment by the president on the October 3rd school board meeting with interested applicants sending resumes to Cassie Gray.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, is there any other discussion? I would just say it sounds like Jennifer Roberson has some interest. So I wonder if, even though we open this up, we do also reach out to her. And if anyone else has someone they want to reach out to, please do so as well. And then we can certainly put that on the next agenda if that's how the board wishes to proceed. Any other discussion before we vote? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and we will hopefully have some people interested. And if not, perhaps Jennifer will just be thrilled to come and be the interested party at our next meeting. All right, we'll move to item 2.7, which is receipt, review, and possible approval of new policy EFDE, public records retention schedules. This was for possible action.
Thank you. So this was our first reading 2 weeks ago at our last meeting, and there were no recommendations for change. And so it is exactly as it was 2 weeks ago.
All right, any questions from the board, or would you like to move to a motion?
Move to approve policy EDFE as written. EFDE. Echo Foxtrot Delta Echo.
There you go. Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.8 is receipt, review, and possible approval of policy JDAB, student discipline, safe and respectful learning environment, discrimination based on race, etc. Everyone can follow that along. Mr. Anderson, anything on that one?
Again, first reading was at our last meeting, and as a reminder, the changes to this policy were to reflect changes in legislation as best as we could interpret them and based on guidance from NDE. There is one error that was discovered and we will fix, and that is that I think it's on page 3, section 2, subsection A. Am I saying this right? Yeah. And then I don't know if it's subsection or how you say that next thing, but 3 and even 1 underneath that. So it goes a lot of layers down. But the phrase gender identity or expression is repeated in there unnecessarily. And so we would simply remove one of the redundant phrases.
Thank you.
So other than that, I have no other edits to the version from 2 weeks ago.
All right, any questions or discussion from the board?
Trying to find where it was.
It is about
Middle of the
yeah,
page.
middle of the page.
It's page 3 middle.
Find where it was, the one that I wanted to talk about.
Oh,
Do you know where that is, CJ?
Is it the one about,
It's about where,
oh, the appeals?
yeah,
Is it that one? Yeah, give me 1 second. I can
I
tell
had
you where
notes
that
written
is.
on it and somehow my notes are incorrect because I can't find it.
Maybe 9.
I think it's in like 14 or 11.
14 is on page 9.
Okay. Oh, page 9. Sorry, I thought you were saying section 9. Yes, it would be page 9, section 14.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so, yeah, this is my only concern on this. It's, let's see,
It's in sections B and C.
Can't see.
Page
Okay,
9.
so if it says, if the alleged incident of discrimination based on race, bullying, or cyberbullying was concerning elementary school children, the parent guardian may appeal to the Director of Elementary Education. In these cases, there is no right to appeal to the superintendent and/or Board of Trustees. And then C says the same thing, but just in regards to secondary education. In these cases, there is no right to appeal to the superintendent and Board of Trustees. And I just feel like the appeals process should not stop at the Director of Elementary Education or Secondary Education. And then go, if you keep reading, it says after that, that it just pretty much goes straight to writing a complaint to the Nevada Department of Education. And so I just think it's important for parents who have a grievance with how something was handled to feel like their grievance was heard if they need to clear up to the superintendent's desk. I also feel like if it goes as far as a complaint being written to the Nevada Department of Education, and then the Nevada Department of Education has a ruling that we did in fact not handle it like it should have been handled, that we were at fault, then I think that it needs to go as far as the superintendent before we recommend that they write a complaint to the Nevada Department of Education versus just stopping at the Director of Special or Secondary Education or Elementary Education. So I think that that needs to be changed to say that it can go as high as the superintendent.
I had some concerns on that also, and was reminded that there was a policy adopted last year. I may be crazy, but I thought part of that discussion was also that if it comes before this board, it's then completely public. We have no way to go into closed session, if I'm understanding that correctly, because it's not a legal matter and it's not a personnel matter. So then anything that's happening with these students is now fully public. And I think that may have been why we had gone that direction. Maybe I'm confusing it with something else, but I remember there being a discussion of how do we protect the privacy and I guess anonymity of the students without making it a full-blown public issue. And I don't know if legally we can go into a closed session to discuss that. It may be good to perhaps modify this to have a Board of Trustee member present, but I don't know then if that becomes a board interfering with operations issue either.
Yeah, I don't think that it needs to go as far as the board. I do think it needs to go as far as the superintendent though. And then if after that they do write a complaint to the Nevada Department of Education and the district was found at fault for however the incident was handled, then I think that it's best that the superintendent saw how it was handled and signed off on it essentially. I think as for a board, then too, we can help kind of hold him accountable. Those rulings are things that parents will use, in litigation and different cases like that. I think that that needs to have come across the superintendent's desk first.
Just question though, do you think anything goes to the Department of Education out of their save something that someone thinks is a grievous from the superintendent? Do you think anything leaves this place to the Department of Education without the superintendent knowing?
I would assume that it doesn't, but practice and policy are two different things. The practice needs to be reflected in what our policy says.
So the policy that you're saying is that he'd need to be at every, he'd need to make a thing, he'd need to make an appointment at every grievance then, on top of overseeing the 26 sites, even if we put secondary education in, that's takes, I don't know, half it, let's say. I don't have the specifics. Combined with all of those students, so he'd have to put time away from the schedule up there rather than running the district itself. He'd have to do these two as opposed to appointing other members that he trusts to oversee other programs. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I do. I think that, I mean, if a parent wants to push it past the director of secondary or elementary education, I think the next stop should be the superintendent's desk and not.
Well, I would assume, and I'd hold him liable if he wasn't involved in that before it goes to Department of Education anyways. I don't know that it needs to be in a policy of requiring him to do it every single time. Seems to be a waste of time for the CEO or the head of our county Department of Education here. And just as a CEO myself, there's things that if someone has a grievance goes to my office manager, that she has full authority to take care of. I would think that we try and run this as efficiently as possible, and that there would be she comes to me if there's a final word, so I know what leaves the office. But I would think that it could be something associated with that. While this is a bigger organization, I would think the principles would still stand.
If I can give a little context as well, I didn't pull the NRS up in front of me exactly, but it's, I believe it's in 388. The NRS there says that basically either I or a designee will hear an appeal. It doesn't say multiple tiers of appeals. It just says I will appeal, or either I or someone I appoint will hear those appeals if the parent is not satisfied with the site level decision. And so thinking about structures of organizations, one of my directors hearing that appeal is an appeal to the superintendent's desk. It's just that I've designated someone else to take care of that. A parallel example for this would be over at our special services department, where if someone is unhappy with something that's happening, they can appeal to the director of special services. And you as a board, I think actually there was an action maybe about a year or so ago where we designated Dr. Higby or whoever is in that seat to be the final stopping point for those appeals, because that's the procedure for that. So just a similar example, and just letting you know how the NRS guided that decision when that policy was approved about a year or so ago.
I believe we have I wish I could remember what, there's another policy that we have done that the same thing. It doesn't go to the superintendent.
JDCE, or the JDs that said yes. Exactly.
Yeah. So to me, if we do that, then we need to change all those.
I will, and not trying to not have work to do, because hopefully I've demonstrated that I'm happy to be a hard worker. Me being the person solely responsible for this would be rather cumbersome, and it would drastically change the way my job works if I had to be the one to do all these investigations and fact findings. It's part of the reason that at a district of this size, because we're not massive, but we're also not small either. That's why we have layers of administrations to be able to handle these types of matters.
I have a question regarding the statement on the end of both B and C there on section 14, where it does say, in these cases, there is no right to appeal to the superintendent and or board of trustees. Why is that included there specifically? Is it because agree with Brooke in that there should be, well, and a couple of things. Also, someone, if they want to make a complaint to the Board of Education, could do so at any time, correct?
Correct.
So the language there on that, the other section E of the same section really doesn't even matter either.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm curious where that goes and why somebody can't just say, hey.
So let's say hypothetical, someone was unhappy with the decision made at Southside Elementary from a discipline standpoint, and they just go straight to the Department of Ed. The Department of Ed is going to receive the complaint, and either they will ask them, have you followed the proper appeals process? Or they might just call over here and try to get a hold of Candace, and Candace will say, you know, I haven't heard anything about this scenario. Then they would redirect that person to that proper appeal process. And then the reason, so that's how that would work. They would redirect that and make sure they've gone through that procedure. And then the reason that language is in there, I guess I don't know definitively why it's a year has passed, but oftentimes people will want to know, well, who's the next person I can go to? Who's the next one I can go to, right? So in this case, we're highlighting that this is the appeal process. You didn't like the principal's decision, you go to the director, and then further down on E, it's or D, I guess, and E, it states what would happen next. And as far as why we don't have the next step in between, it's just the way the NRS reads is after that designee hears that, it states in there that the next step would be to go to the Department of Education. So that follows the way the NRS reads.
So we couldn't change that if we wanted, because it's based on NRS. Is that what you're saying?
The thing you could change is
You could add the superintendent in after.
And then you could just designate somebody else based on NRS. So then we put you in a cumbersome situation where you're pushed between NRS, depending on how your schedule dictates and what the board policy has stated.
potentially, depending on timelines and scenarios, yeah.
So I just have a hypothetical, and I'm not saying that you would do this or that this would happen.
Sure.
But this is policy for the district under any superintendent with any district staff.
Yeah.
If something went as far as they didn't like the way that the principal handled things, administration handled things. So they appealed to the director of elementary education or secondary education. They didn't like that. This policy says the next step is a complaint written to the Nevada Department of Education. Those findings come back. The superintendent, if the board says, you know, this wasn't handled right or whatever, the superintendent then could say, well, you know, as per policy, that stopped at my director of secondary education. And had I seen it or had I, you know, and kind of like act like, well, if I'd have been part of this, things would have been different. Do you get what I'm saying? And kind of.
Yeah, like someone could
skirt-
distance themselves from the
skirt some-
decision.
Yeah, kind of skirt some of that responsibility. So that's why I just think before you recommend sending it as far as a complaint to the Nevada Department of Education, I think the superintendent needs to be in there as a next step.
The
If there's a
superintendent is also still responsible for those people that made that decision, so.
Yeah, so he's responsible. that's just exactly what I was just gonna say. If you're not, if there is a decision from the Department of Education, you're not exempt from that, Mr. Anderson.
No, yeah,
You would be
Big ownership.
looped into that whole decision from them.
yeah, and I get what Brooke's saying is she's acknowledging that, well, maybe that's how we do it now and how I do it with them, but you know, if it's a different superintendent and a different, like if circumstances change, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. You're right, things could change. However, I think the accountability for that's my designee, right? I designate that person to do that. They know the process, and just as a natural part of that process, it's, hey, here's what I found, here's what I'm thinking. Do you agree or not? And we work through that. And so it's accurate this way, and that, so because you can appeal it to me if you want, but the reality is I'm probably, like, we can put my name there, but the reality is going to be an exact practice of what we're doing now, unless the board tells me you have to do all the investigating yourself. So nothing's going to change other than wording unless I'm directed to do so. And that would, like I said, drastically change how I do my job and what I'm able to spend my time doing in my job.
Brooke, am I understanding correctly? You're not asking for the superintendent to take the place of the director of elementary or secondary education. You're just saying it should go principal, director, superintendent, NDE. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, and from what I'm hearing, the practice is that when it goes as far as his director of elementary education or secondary education, he's kind of part of that process anyways. He's already spending the time doing that. And so I just think that is a great practice. And I think good practice should be made policy. I think it needs to be in policy. The wording needs to be in there that's how it's done.
I'm not spending any time investigating.
But you're reviewing it is what
I'm being filled in on what's happened and given the information.
So maybe we can word it that way in the policy, that it goes as high as them. And then, if they appeal further than that, there's a review of that by the superintendent before.
So Brooke, then perhaps what you're saying is, so right now, the way the policy reads is the director has 5 days to meet with the parent to hear the concerns. They then have 10 days to inform the parent guardian of the decision. If I'm understanding correctly, you're saying sometime in that 10 days, we should make it policy that the superintendent will be informed of the decision. Would that satisfy what you're looking at? And does that already fit in with?
If after that 10 days, the parent is still not satisfied, then the superintendent reviews it.
I think I would agree with Josh, being in as many people who've been in the upper levels or the highest level of a business or of an organization. I don't know that we need to necessarily weigh down the superintendent with yet one more duty and at the same time delay justice or delay decisions to the parents, because that's going to add another 15 days, which is 4 more school weeks, technically, I guess. And so that would be another month for them to get an answer if we add the superintendent. But if I'm hearing correctly with what procedure now is that he's already aware, or the superintendent is already aware of what's happening at that level. And I think we could satisfy your concern with saying, oh, I didn't know, sorry, by putting it into policy, as you said, put the practice into policy by simply saying the superintendent must be informed prior to the 10-day clock running out.
I see what you're saying.
I guess if really need to have something in there, perhaps a place where you could put something is in D. Within 10 school days following the contact meeting, the director, you could say, must inform the superintendent and the parent guardian of their decision, or something in that area. That way,
That'd be perfect.
That way, that the superintendent also knows, and there's no way of passing the buck. If there's anywhere, I would put it there, but I would not remove anything to say there is no right to appeal, because I think that next logical step is always going to be the Department of Ed.
Do you foresee being informed by a director, not necessarily the incumbents, but by being informed of a director that you would say, whoa, this is not the right decision, and you would need time to adjust? Or a superintendent,
that could happen. Absolutely, that could happen. And if that's the case, there are procedures for just informing parents it's going to take more time than 10 days, and making sure we're transparent about that and why we need that extra time. So that's how I would handle that in that scenario. If we pushed it right up to that 10-day and we are out of time, and that comes to me and I'm like, I don't think we got it right here, then we would just enact those next steps. That's how I would handle that.
Does the superintendent need to be informed prior to informing the?
Yeah, you would want to inform. Yes, in order for this to make sense, you would inform the superintendent first and then the parents. Yeah.
So would language stating within 10 school days following the contact meeting, the director must inform the superintendent, followed by the parent guardian of his or her decision.
Yeah, I think that would
Would
fit.
that-
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that satisfies kind of the point I was trying to get to. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right, do we have a motion from the board?
Madam Chair, I'd like to amend. I'd like to take this in multiple steps, only because there may be other questions in regards to it. So I'd like to get this part satisfied. So I'd like to amend policy JDAB for consideration so that section 14 subsections B, section 14 subsection D read, within 10 school days following the contact meeting, the director must inform the superintendent, followed by the parent guardian of his or her decision. Uphold, modify, or rescind.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that? All in favor of approval of that amendment to this policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, chair votes aye and that carries. Is there any other discussion on this item?
Madam Chair, if I may, going backwards just a little bit, page 7, section 9, subsection B, references actually, let me confirm that I am saying what I think I'm saying. I'm actually looking for, I apologize. Can we go to page 8, section 11, subsection A? Indicates the investigator's report must include recommendations concerning the imposition of disciplinary action or other measures to be imposed as a result of the violation in accordance with the policy governing disciplinary action adopted by the board. Regarding that, we have multiple disciplinary policies, and many of them, in fact, I think each of them covers a different subsection of offense. Each of them having a variety of disciplinary actions. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Is there anything in this that would pose a problem because we have a variety of disciplines for somebody to be able to say, well, I was bullied in this regard, which falls under policy JDDB, but my friend was bullied under this regard, which is JDCH, for example. I have no idea what those policies are. I just know those are some of the policies of discipline, and have that be an issue. And I know that's a really deep question, and I regret that I didn't ask that previously. But I'm in reading this, I want to make sure that that's not a problem, because it says recommendations for the disciplinary action of policy, and we have policies.
It would be the policy governing what the disciplinary action would be. You could read it that way too.
Okay, perfect.
I can read it the opposite there, where it's just the policy that governs the discipline.
Whichever of those policies it may be, it's that way.
I think it's I'm not a lawyer, but I would say just reading this and having read lots of law, it looks like you can read either way.
Okay.
We could eliminate the word "the," and that would, with policy, it would stop it being singular and make it plural, possibly plural.
Okay, I think that would solve my question and go to Josh's point as well. Madam Chair, move to amend policy JDAB section 11 subsection A to strike the word "the" preceding policy governing disciplinary action.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that change will be made as well. Is there any other discussion on this item before we vote on the amended policy JDAB?
Madam Chair, section 16 on page 10 indicates that there is to be a principal's monthly report. I don't know that we need to change policy on this, but I'd like to perhaps have a synopsis of this. How often are we hearing, are we getting bullying reports? How often are the principals spending time on this? I don't know if that needs to go through a quarterly report that our directors provide. I don't know if that needs to be something on the superintendent. I don't even know that it needs to necessarily come before this board in a public meeting, but I would like to see data on this. And I don't know, I know that I've seen something about an annual report on bullying at some point, but I don't remember if that was SRO. I don't remember what that was. Is this?
We have an annual report that has to be put together. But yeah, I mean, if you want to hear about data on bullying, the report would be as simple as this is how many cases have been reported. This is how many were substantiated. This is how many were not. But we can certainly have our secondary and elementary directors report on that. I don't know if you want a quarterly or semi-annual or
Would that report break down like this is how many were reported to administration and
Yes.
then went beyond administration to directors?
Oh,
Went beyond that to this is how many actually have written complaints to Nevada Department of Ed, so that we're kind of filled in on
Sure. Yep.
the level of those. I was just, I'm not saying it needs to, I was just wondering if it did.
That is not the report I had in mind. I was thinking just about the things I said, but if you would like to also know about how many appeals have been made and how many have gone to what step, that is also easily pulled together.
So it leads to the next step of what do we do with that information? If we're just getting information and we're not doing anything with it, then it's kind of pointless, and I don't want to waste time on doing that.
I'm not sure what you can do with it.
But we really can't do a lot necessarily, but I would like, I guess maybe in my head, I'm thinking, okay, do we have a huge problem at school X with bullying? And if all of a sudden we see a spike, what's causing that? Is that something that we need to address from policy, or is that something that operationally needs to be addressed? Is that something we approach to our parents, et cetera? Is there something without us getting involved operationally? How can we assist our kids to have a safe environment? And if there's a spike in bullying, is that because it's the newest TikTok, YouTube challenge, or is it because there's an issue? Is this a breakdown in discipline? I don't know. That's kind of what I was starting to originally go with. But I do like Brooke's idea also of if something's getting appealed, especially if it goes all the way to the state level, I think that is something that we should know as a board of how many went to the state and how many came back. If they all come back in our favor, great. But I would be more worried about how many did the state overturn. I don't know what the term is, but I guess I'd be more concerned with that.
I would love a report on how many went to the state and what the findings were from the state. I feel like is.
That wouldn't happen in an open meeting because that would contain personally
Well,
identifiable
I know, I'm
information.
not saying an
but
open meeting,
yeah.
but could we just be provided with that information?
Yeah, I think I've done that once for you already during this school year. So yeah, I'll continue to do that.
All right.
Thank you. Last thing that I have is page 12, section 19, subsection D, subparagraph I or 1. Consequences of violating that a policy because of behavior listed in IEP. It says that basically this policy doesn't apply to that. And so I just want to make sure I'm understanding if my student has a behavior issue that I put into an IEP and that behavior then leads to bullying under this policy, my student is then not held to this standard. Is that correct?
Dr. Higbee can jump in if I don't explain this right, but in the world of IEPs, there are very specific things that are listed as what that student needs an individualized education plan for. And so if a behavior occurs then an IEP committee convenes to conduct an MDT, which is which is put in place to determine if that behavior was a manifestation of that student's disability. If that group determines that that behavior was a direct manifestation of that student's disability, then a few other things happen after that. But the types of consequences that you might see in a regular situation would not necessarily occur for that student. If the MDT determines that had nothing to do with that student's disability, then they would receive a consequence just like anyone else would according to our matrix. And then furthermore, if they do determine that it is a result or a manifestation of that disability, then that IEP team would then discuss, okay, what else needs to be done then? If we have an IEP in place and this behavior still occurred, what other supports need to be put in place to make sure that this does not occur again?
Okay, and thank you, because that kind of answers what I was looking for.
Did I do okay, doctor? All right.
I mean, no offense, and I don't mean to be insensitive, but I just, having not had children with IEPs and not had these type of behavioral issues that might be present in an IEP, I don't want someone to get a get out of jail free card because, oh, it's just them.
Yeah, no, there's a
Thank you.
intricate process that goes in there. Yes, Ashley, you have a question?
Yeah, what is an IEP?
An IEP is an individualized education plan. And so for any student who receives special education services, a group of people get together and through testing, through all sorts of analysis, they figure out what this disability is and how we can provide supports to make sure that that student is able to benefit from their education. So the IEP it's an actual document that contains all the testing results, all the recommendations of the committee, all the requirements of what we're going to do to help that student. And that's something that's reviewed on an annual basis to make sure the students are benefiting from school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ashley, because we throw around acronyms a lot. So thank you for reminding us that we need to express that a little bit more clearly and communicate clearly. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion from the board on policy JDAB, aside from the two amendments we have already made?
Madam Chair, move to approve policy JDAB with the amendments already passed.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving policy JDAB with the two amendments that were already passed, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that motion carries. I would recommend we take a quick 5-minute break. Everybody looks like they could use a little bit of a stretch, so let's be back here. On my watch, it is 7:03, so let's be back here by 7:08. right, well, my clock says it is 7:08, so we are going to reconvene with all who are here and hope we get everybody else back shortly. All right, we will move on to item 2.09, receipt, review, and possible approval of new policy JDAC, diverse gender identities or expressions. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Again, was first presented at our last board meeting, and no changes have been made, no suggestions were made, and we didn't make any changes. And I know we had a public comment that was read about this one. It's right? There was one read about this. Yeah. I do just want to highlight again from our last meeting. This policy is word for word verbatim from Nevada Administrative Code 388-880, which is attached to this agenda item. And so anything herein is, it's exactly what Nevada Administrative Code says we need to do. So.
All right, any questions from the board on this one?
I'm sure I don't necessarily have a question, but I do want to address what was mentioned in public comment by Ms. Nises. I'm not reading it the same way she is. I'm reading it that we actually are prohibited from disciplining an employee for failing to use a pronoun unless it's bullying. And we've just got finished with the bullying policy, which is, it's a consistent, repetitive thing. And so I'm not following where she's coming from on that. Which is ironic that I used a pronoun and maybe I shouldn't, but anyways, where Cindy is coming from on that, it seems to me that we actually cannot discipline unless it's been proven that it's bullying, which would then actually have gone through the steps of the principal and the director and now notification of the superintendent. So
yeah, that's accurate. And we have other policies that support, because this isn't the only one about gender nonconformity, and in other ones it phrases the same thing as students are to be addressed by their preferred pronoun. However, there is understanding for honest mistakes and that sort of thing. And so, you would not, I've been through a couple of these situations already, and you don't provide discipline unless unless an investigation proves that this person is willfully doing this, and that would constitute bullying to that student. So
I'd also like to go ahead.
Before you go forward, I'd just like to address the absurdity stated that you assume your gender when it was just here. So I'd just like to stop that. It's like we laugh at it, but lexicon is important. And so like the assumption that you had is not unreasonable based on the information you had. So I'd just like to stop that idea that we have to constantly correct ourselves. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, sir. I'd also like the public, because of the community that we live in, to understand that in here it specifically says that there are methods to support appropriate engagement of the parents or guardians, and that a site administrator in which a pupil has a diverse identity or expression must convene a team that includes the parent or guardian. So I just wanted to make sure that the public knew that. With that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to, because it's required under Nevada Administrative Code, approve policy JDAC.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, chair votes aye, and that motion carries.
Aye on that last one. Sorry,
Okay,
we are
thanks.
having a little difficulty down here. with the desk falling apart.
breaking stuff.
Fell on her. She's okay.
We don't want any injuries. All right, item 2.10, receipt, review, and possible approval of new policy JGCE, student welfare, student safety, video surveillance. This is for possible action.
All right, another one repeat from last meeting. This is the second viewing of this. As a little bit of reminder of the background information, because we are using, well, it's a good idea to have this policy in place anyway, but we are required to have this policy in place at this point because we plan on using federal funds to help fund the installation of cameras at all of our school sites. And the usage of those federal funds is contingent upon us having a policy in place for the managing of video surveillance. So this one did sustain quite a few edits from our last one. Like it's almost a different policy, same topic, very different looking policy. So last meeting, you all gave a lot of great recommendations, and we also noticed some other things as well. And so the one you see in front of you is a lot of changes. I will say that I even still have one more that we've picked out since it was put on the agenda. So I will point that out to you. When we developed this, we were thinking very specifically about cameras mounted in hallways and on the exterior of buildings. And so we were thinking about the capability of those cameras, but we did not consider that we also have cameras in buses. And so whatever policy we institute is going to manage all video surveillance. And so it was put down here in section, let me find it real quick, sorry. So this would be on the first page, the third paragraph, where right after the blue line that is there, where it says cameras shall not be placed in any areas where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. Then it says at this time, cameras are not equipped with audio recording capabilities. That is not an accurate statement. Our buses do, those cameras do collect audio. So in order to make sure this is universal, I don't have an exact sentence, but we would probably revert to what was there before, where it says cameras may be equipped with audio recording capabilities. I think that would make the most sense. So that is a change I already plan on making so that it is accurate.
Discussion from the board.
So the only place that there's audio is just in the buses? Other than that, we really don't have.
Yeah, that
you are aware of.
Yeah, and I mean, don't call me a liar if I'm wrong, but my best understanding from everyone we've talked to is that's the only place where we have cameras that do collect audio, and the new system that we're putting in everywhere would not be audio.
Is there a legal reason regarding the audio?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
But they would be separate. Usually they're separate. So you can do separate things with video and audio back and forth. So I say I would point more towards just making a separate paragraph, adding it as far as the buses have recording. Unless it's, because if you say may, now we have everything, and then we've got all the distrust that comes with that.
Gotcha.
So it sounds like perhaps we should table this, because if we're gonna have to reapprove it anyways,
maybe,
then perhaps we just table this.
Okay, so we will go back with this one and separate out paragraphs that talk about cameras, where we have cameras that use audio, and then the rest do not, kind of thing. The problem, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm just thinking.
I know it's cumbersome, I really do, but
We'll come up with a good way to describe that. I believe, and when, if you have something very specific you'd like to suggest, I can hear it, but I think we can figure something out there.
I would think that just putting like a phrase, something like, but not limited to, when you're describing areas of that nature would suffice.
Is there a pressing need to have this approved this evening?
No, it's not urgent. We're still in the very beginning stages of getting wiring in places and that sort of thing. So yeah, Cassie shook her head no, so that means we're okay.
My next report, well, they'll ask if it's in place, is due mid-October, mid or end of October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So if we have it ready by next meeting and you're satisfied with it, then.
I'm sure move to table policy JGCE for possible consideration on the October 3 Board of Trustees meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that? All right, all in favor of tabling this until we, excuse me, to put on the October meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that motion carries. Item 2.11 is receipt of quarterly update reports.
So we've got two today, one from our grants department, that's Cassie Stalkey, and then following her, we'll hear from Julie Davis, our CFO.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So far for FY '24, we have about $16.5 million in grant revenue coming in. And then we have one pending application of $500,000 for our COPS 23 grant. We already received the first one, and that's why you're approving the policy, but we went in for an additional $500,000 for this upcoming fiscal year. And then I just wanted to give you some information about our COVID funds. ESSER 2, the grant cycle ends on September 30th. We've already expended all of our ESSER funds for ESSER 2 SURSA last June 2023. We still have ESSER 3, the American Rescue Plan, which closes, oh, I have a typo, I'm so sorry. It closes September 30th, 2024. So we still have another year there. We have $688,000 remaining, which has all been encumbered for salary and fringe benefits. Other COVID-related funds, we have our school-based mental health grant, which was part of ESSER 2. It was an allocation that was dedicated to the state where they put out a separate competitive application that we applied for. That closes September 30th. And we use this funding to fund all of our social workers and then our social worker coordinator. So all of those positions will now have to be absorbed by the general fund until we find additional funding. We also have AB 495, which closes September 30th, 2024. And that's also a set aside from NDE that they put out as a competitive grant. We were awarded $4.4 million. We have 1.4 remaining. The remaining allocation will be used for our reading interventionist, another year of paper online tutoring, and then summer school. Julie will talk a little bit more, but we just had Eide Bailey on site last week to perform our single audit. They chose 5 of our major funds, which included SPED, the Education Stabilization Fund, the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, our school lunch program, and then 21st Century. All the bullet points within there are individual grants that fall under that major fund. Another major component that we're working on in addition to the audit is our NDE monitoring and risk assessment. I've spoke to you about this before. Right now we're working on our corrective action. We had 2 identified issues or deficiencies. One was the development of financial management policies and internal controls. So our specific actions is that we need to develop procedures and policies, and it's the 3 bullet points below. It's the budgetary allocation and reconciliation or commingling of funds. Also, we need to develop procedures and policies in regards to contracts, purchasing, discretionary use of funds, micro purchase and debarment. And then the last one is grant management to include a minimum allowability, time and effort, request for reimbursement, and our indirect cost policies. Our second deficiency was we needed to have a reporting tracker, which I've been working on. And it was basically, we don't have a document in the case that I'm no longer in the district. Somebody else wouldn't be able to come in and know when certain due dates are or reports are due. So we've been working, we just had a meeting with NDE yesterday, and we need to have the 2 corrective actions completed by January 5th, and we're about halfway there. And I think that's about all I have. I think we'll probably have more after we get our final report from Eide Bailey.
Any questions for Cassie? Okay. All right, thanks, Cassie.
Okay, so over the next couple months, you're gonna be bombarded by year-end audited financial statements and budget. So I kind of focused on updates other than detailed numbers. So let me know if you have any questions or need any other details. So as Cassie said, we're currently in the middle of our financial audit. These are done every year. Last week, we had about 6 Eide Bailey staff on site. There'll be 1 to 2 on site for about the next month. The others are working virtually. So right now we're working on finishing closing our year and drafting financial statement footnotes. A draft of the audit report is due to us from the auditors by October 31st. So a detailed presentation is expected in November. One of the things we've been working on is we got the finance department on a Google Drive. So our forms are digital. We've got a file for forms, templates, manuals, and policies. Just the finance related ones, of course, all of them are in board docs, but this pulls it out where admin and finance secretaries can more easily find it. Grants folder, chart of accounts, just trying to make things a little more easily available. And we had a training on this for staff on August 8th. So currently we're waiting for the AB 519 funding for the new Owyhee school. That's $64.5 million. We've requested the amount from the state, but of course that's a large dollar amount and they're still with legislative session. That wasn't the only thing that got thrown their way. So they're still trying to figure out the logistics of that payment. But the fund and the bank account have all been set up and are ready to go. Friday meal service. So September 12th, last week we got approval from Department of Agriculture to award the Child and Adult Care Food Program. So this is what will help fund Friday meal services for the rural schools. Elko and Spring Creek are not eligible, so we plan to fund that out of the at-risk fund. This is still a new program, so this funding would start in October. If it's reimbursed per meal, of course, it depends on participation, on how much that revenue will be and if it'll offset costs or not. So this is the program that the half hour of instructional enrichment is required in order to be eligible for this fund. And that leads into other Friday expenses. So in addition to Friday meal service and instructional enrichment, we could have tutoring costs or other expenses that teachers need to come in for. So we've created a code to track all Friday expenses. Of course, it heavily relies on people coding their expenses correctly and using that code, but that's the intention.
Before you go too much further, what process is in place to assist in coding correctly and or corrective action when it's not done properly?
So on that finance drive I showed you, we uploaded instructions on where Friday meal service hours would be coded and where tutoring would be coded and what account codes to use. There's an example of a timesheet on how to fill it out. As for enforcing it, if they just stick random overtime hours on their timesheet, payroll's not going to know if it was really Friday. We can keep an eye out for seeing hours on regular timesheets that are coded are on the Friday day. But it'll be working closely with the schools and the principals to get accurate reporting. So this update was sent to me by Success Fund. This is a report of the last year's worth of fundraising. So as you can see, Elko High and Spring Creek High use it the most. 5 out of 6 of our high schools are using Success Fund. It says no elementaries, but grammar is there, which means they have them in probably as a middle school instead. But that's the total raised through Success Fund in the last year. Coming soon and in the works. So we've been working with 3 companies to get quotes and demos on electronic timesheets. So at the moment, we're still doing paper timesheets that get submitted to Central, which means Jackpot, Wendover, and all the sites are sending their paper timesheets to us for processing. So we're looking at getting that digital so people would enter it online, approval would be online, and there'd be no more paper to send to us, or less paper, I guess. So we have a meeting next week with one of our preferred from our demos, one of the favorites we had. So we'll involve more people and see if that'll meet the needs of all the departments and decide from there if we move forward. So coming up pretty soon, there'll be the audit presentation with audited financial statements. That comes with a corrective action plan. There is almost always a corrective action plan because if one function in one fund is over budget, that needs a corrective action. So we know we'll get one. The next budget adjustment is due in December. So the purpose of this is to reflect audited ending fund balances. And then by then we should have bargaining unit agreements so we can budget for the impacts of those. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie. All right, we'll move on to item, and before we move on, thank you for the quarterly updates. All of you, we appreciate it. It helps the board, see more clearly what's going on. So thank you for your time. We'll move on to item 3.1, which is our consent agenda. We do have one item that we asked to pull out. So if it's all right with the board, let's start with that item and then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. All right, the item that was asked to be pulled out, I believe is the attorney-client fee contract. Am I correct? Did I write that down right?
Yes.
All right, so that discussion on that item.
All right, I'll go ahead and start because that was something by my request. Part of the last meeting, as I said, I was going to go and ask about this social media litigation while I was at the NASB conference. And I did do that. I don't really have anything to bring back other than it affirmed what my personal thoughts are in that I don't support this action. I feel like it's a frivolous lawsuit. I'm sure that you could assign some blame here and there, but it's not something that's just cut and dry to me. And I don't like just going out to sue people to sue that maybe we'll get something. Sure, it'd be nice to get some money and it's in the right way, but just on a personal standpoint, if it were just me as a person, this is something I would let go. And I don't feel like this is a good use of the court's time, to be completely honest. If there were something that were more direct in as far as cause and effect, then yeah, I might be on board. But all I'm hearing right now on this is speculative stuff. And I don't want to be a part of it. So my vote on this is going to be no.
Thank you. Other discussion?
Got a couple of things. On page 3, section 5, the first paragraph on the page, it indicates a value of non-monetary property. Yet section 5, subsection 3 indicates that non-monetary property isn't applied. So it seems out of order there. And I just am not happy having in a legal document conflicting language. I don't know what kind of opportunity we have for correcting that and submitting a counter proposal. But that is something that I'd like to see cleaned up if at all possible. And the other thing that I have a concern with is page 4, section 6, second paragraph. It indicates that we would pay expenses based on proportion of total award, but yet it also says equally. So I don't want to have the same, I don't want to have to pay the same expense that Clark County does or some gigantic district in Texas or California or wherever that they're doing more expenses for that, for travel, et cetera. And have us pay for that equally. I get that on one hand, we're all still districts, but I think proportionately it should be better. So again, I don't know what the ability of us to send a counter proposal is, but those are things that I think should be cleaned up. To Jeff's point, this evening we've heard 2 different concerns with IEPs, one of them specifically dealing with school psychologists. We've also discussed bullying and a few other things, cyberbullying. I don't like frivolous lawsuits, but I wholeheartedly believe that social media has caused many of the problems that we see in our students. I don't understand how we have had such an dramatic uptick in the problems that we see in our students, even over just a simple generation. And I don't know what that answer is. Are we fishing to say, oh, well, maybe we'll throw something at the wall and see if it sticks? I can understand where Jeff's coming from, but I very much believe that students that don't have access to social media tend to be healthier than those that do. And so I believe that social media is a problem, and I understand business and economics enough to understand that companies do things that shouldn't be done when the bottom dollar is at stake. So I think that while I don't like class action suits, I don't like frivolous lawsuits, I think this is something that should go forward. And I don't know if we're allowed to change the language. I'm not making that as part of a motion necessarily, but I would like to at least have that discussion with either Mr. Anderson and the attorney or with our legal representatives and the attorney if possible.
All right, other questions from the board on this one?
I would just agree with Matt here that some of those do seem a little troublesome. Unless we can get them ironed out. On the other side though, yeah, same thing, agreeance. Social media seems to have a predatory nature towards our children and what they do. And it's been brought forth in multiple avenues. Yeah, I'm all for this.
All right, any other?
I'll have to say initially I was right where Jeff is. After thinking over it a little bit more, I'm more for it. I do feel though like suing these social media companies for the emotional damage that they've caused to children. I always think, this all starts at home. Parents have got to make sure that their kids aren't on social media and that they're aware of the risks that they're letting, their kids take by allowing them on these sites and stuff like that. So part of me just feels like suing and receiving this money in order to use for to help these children socially and emotionally is just kind of putting a Band-Aid on the real problem of making, parents need to step up. They need a parent. They need to make sure that they're not allowing their children to be doing things that is proven to be not good for their mental health. And so my only, I guess, request would be that if anything happened with this, that it talks about where the money needs to go and how it would be used. But I think a big part of that, or a portion of that money, needs to be used to educate parents on the dangers of social media and the risks that they're taking allowing their children on it. So that hopefully we're not just putting a Band-Aid on it, but we're helping to actually solve a problem.
right, any other comments?
Madam Chair, I'm going to hedge my bets here a little bit just because I want to be able to approve everything else that's in here. Therefore, I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda without including the attorney-client fee contract.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on approving the consent agenda without the attorney-client fee contract? Any other, sorry, I'm reading too many things and talking at the same time. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All right, all in favor of approving the consent agenda minus that item, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the consent agenda minus that item is approved. How would you like to proceed on the attorney-client fee contract? Would you like to see this at another meeting?
I just had one more thing to add to it, is that if we come up with a lawyer next week that wants us to sue Coca-Cola because of refined sugar, or we want to sue Frosted Flakes over sugar, or, you know, any of those other things, I'm going to be a no on that too. So I just want to make that clear. We use social media. We all do. I'd feel kind of hypocritical suing Facebook and having a site at the same time. So. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Hold on just a minute. Any other comments from the board? All right, I would welcome a public comment.
Thank you, Madam President. And if I may just ask a question from the public. It's unclear to me when I read this document, if this is about a specific ongoing suit, or is this just creating a relationship with a particular law firm where you can pursue a future potential incident? That is not at all clear to me.
This is a specific lawsuit that is in the beginning stages, and various law firms are maybe recruiting is not the right word, or maybe it is, but getting school districts, seeing what the level of interest is from school districts across the nation about this. So it's a specific lawsuit.
Thank you.
And if you would like to hear from the attorney, at our last meeting in Jackpot, it was item 1.6 on the agenda. All right, back to this item. What would we like to do? Would we like to see it again on a future agenda? Would we like to just make a decision tonight? Do we want to try to make changes and have it brought back? What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, the item itself is not of a timely nature. That was one of the questions I asked the attorney at our last meeting. My understanding is the lawsuit was filed in April. We have 18 months to join in at the rate that was put in. However, I don't see necessarily a need to delay unless we think that the language is going to be changed. I don't think we're going to have a delay is going to help Mr. Durham change one way or another on his opinion. And so, CJ, do you think, or you know, when Rob reviewed this, is there an opportunity for us to make I'm assuming it's a pretty boilerplate agreement, and I don't know how much flexibility there is or willingness on the other party to change the language. Do you think changing language is going to help at all? Or requesting to change the language is going to help at all?
I don't know. We can ask them. I don't know if they'll say yes or no. I can't predict that, but we can certainly let them know that either they can change or they can give us an explanation as to how it makes sense, and then I can report back on that if it's a future item.
Okay, move to table the attorney-client fee contract to give administration time to ask the questions that have come up this evening.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, chair votes aye, and we will see this again on our next agenda. All right, we'll move on to item 4.1, report from our NASB Director.
All right, I got lots of stuff today. We covered the social media litigation. And again, I just want to reiterate that I think parents, Brooke, you also said something that I neglected to mention, but I believe parents should be responsible for their kids. If you don't want your kid on social media, don't have them on social media. That's where it ends up. Anyway, we talked, one of the other things that I was sent to talk to some folks about was school start times and the Nevada Department of Education's our State Board of Education is kind of driving that. We talked about it in our open meeting about how it's a local control issue and the NRS supports local control. I mentioned some of the issues that we would have here in Elko County with transportation, and many other districts echoed the same sentiment. They would have those issues if they were to mandate start times. NASB is going to be working with the Superintendent's Association. You guys have already come out against that, and we're going to be drafting a letter to be sent along with that. So that covered our discussion on school start times. Let me jump to the training that we went through. In the morning, we did conflict resolution and verbal de-escalation skills training. And this one was a perfect example of how you can't do it on Zoom. We kind of were up and down. It was actually really good to have breakfast and not try and fall asleep right after in a meeting because we were up in different groups. We did some self-evaluations to figure out some of the different strengths and weaknesses that we had in communication and de-escalation. Personally found out that I'm a competitor and an avoider was two of the ones that came out. But anyways, a real good class, and I feel like we picked up a few things in there to be able to help with conflict de-escalation. The afternoon session, we had a presentation from Pershing County School District. They came in and talked about their MTSS program, or multi-tiered systems of support. They use a Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment mini. It's just a little questionnaire that somebody can fill out on a child, ask who it is and what the relationship is, whether it's a parent, a teacher, an administrator. And based on those ratings, they can divide students up into 3 tiers. And depending on which one that is, determines the level of involvement with the specialists that they have on staff to be able to help those kids to get it to where they want to be able to have about 5% of the kids on a level 3. That's the most intense form of support. And then level 2 would be about 15% of your students, and the rest, 80% should fall into the level 3. But it was a really good presentation on what they're doing. And I actually do have some questions for, our district and what we're doing that I'm going to have to investigate a little more. But I was pretty impressed with, like I say, the system that they have put together, and it's something we should look at if we're not already. Moving on from that one, we had apologies. There it is. NASB has come out with the Certified Public Official Certificate packet. I have that here. It's available on the website, but it lists out all of the requirements. In Area 1, you have to complete all of the 14 NASB learning objectives. Area 2 is completion of a NASB mentoring program. And then Area 3 is completion of 55 hours of elective leadership courses and leadership conferences that you can do to get that certified public official certificate. So everything we're going to be doing going forward with NASB, including with the annual meeting that's coming up here, will, the breakouts and things are going to be designed to try and get as much completion of these objectives and certifications that as we can, so that we can all move towards getting that certified public official certificate. Sure.
55 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry for the 55 hours. Is that a time limit? Is that within a year? Is that within 2 years? Is it
that is a
4-year degree?
Let me look here real quick.
I didn't know, and I looked through it briefly, but I didn't see necessarily.
I don't think there's a time.
I don't
limit-
think there's a
limit on
time
that.
limit. I think that's just cumulative over your service. So it doesn't list here a time limit at all, but I'll check on that. Sorry. Okay, and then also I was able to, some I haven't seen come up back on the agenda, but that we'll be getting to was our board governance guide. And I talked to a few of the other, I spent a lot of time actually with Clark County and with some other folks there too, though, just during dinner and things like that, asking questions on what they do. And there was a couple tips that came in regarding communication and getting like a specific updates from the superintendent that was in there. They talked about succession planning so that people don't go in cold as far as like if we get a new board president or new clerk, that we kind of plan that out to list that out so that there's some training, some on-the-job training that goes on there before somebody goes into that position, actually just completely cold. And I believe that's about it on the discussions I had in there, but it was a really excellent training session. If both of them were kind of hands-on, a lot of interactive stuff. So I encourage everybody, if you get the opportunity to make it to those, they are very valuable conferences. So, and looking forward to next meeting will be the annual conference, and that's, my apologies, I should have had that right here. It's coming up in December though.
Yeah, November 30th, December 1st and 2nd.
Right at the end of November, and that'll be in Las Vegas, Lake Las Vegas. So that's all I have for you today.
All right, just really quickly, just because you brought up the Nevada Department of Education wanting to mandate start times. I was able to watch that meeting. I did talk to some people who serve on that board. Sorry, I said the Nevada Department of Education. It is the State Board of Education. I apologize. And they would like input from students. They would like to hear what students think about start times. And they would like a lot of information from students about what they think. They are wanting to mandate that no schools start before 8 o'clock. As you know, in Elko County, we have some that start earlier than that. And we have limitations, but some members of that board have zero interest in financial issues. They have zero interest in any adult issues. They want to know what I have to say. So I guess, Ashlee, if you would, want to take that on and find out what students think about school start times, we'd love to hear a report from our students. I'm not giving you an assignment to bring back to the board, but that's just something that's really important for us and for that board, is they want to hear from students. If they think it's all right to start before 8, or if they're okay with starting, at 8 and having practice until 11 p.m. or any of those kinds of things. So I'm just putting that out there for you, Ashlee.
If they do change those start times, will it affect after school hours, like 3:40?
Yeah, it would affect everything. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, President. I was just going to mention that. Remember, start times, end times. So while one hand is waving at you, what's going on with the other hand? Start times will affect 1,000,000% will affect end times, and will affect how organizations outside of those end times change too as well. So
I lied too. I did have one more thing.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
The NSBA conference, the National School Board Administration Conference, is in New Orleans, April 6th through 8th. I do plan on attending that. If anyone else is wanting to get on that, we need to there's an early bird registration. That's what I ran into and why I didn't go last year, is because I just felt like it wasn't a good value by signing up a month before. So if we want to get in on that, look on those dates, April 6th through 8th. It's the NSBA conference in New Orleans, but we should be getting reservations and stuff like that done sometime in the next couple of weeks if anybody's wanting to go.
And hopefully it's not as expensive as last year's was with the hotels and everything else, but Jeff.
There is discount if we get in early right now, so.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or guidance for Jeff? Okay, we will move on to item 4.2, items from board members.
I have a couple.
Go ahead, Susan.
One, and I've mentioned it before, we need a new evaluation for our superintendent. And at least I think we do, and we need to get it done sooner rather than later, because otherwise it'll be time to do his evaluation and he won't have an opportunity to have looked at that beforehand. And the other one is I would like to see a list of goals from him for the year and then report on those throughout the year of, is he getting to those or something along those lines.
All right, thank you, Susan. And just since Jeff mentioned the board governance manual and now you're mentioning evaluation, I will just say we've got those on the bill for October coming up shortly.
Thank you.
Any other items from board members? All right, seeing none, we'll, yeah, better.
Go
ahead, John.
I would love to see the timer on the screen for our public comments, just to make it easier. I think that would make it easier for some folks. Public speaking is not everybody's forte. And then when you add a timer, it becomes a competition. And then when you add physiology, it creates it really. So a timer somewhere, I mean, we have what, five screens. I think we can throw one up somewhere. And the other one, I'll wait, I'll yield until the superintendent's report.
Madam Chair, if I may, Mr. Granillo's public comment in special ed, Ms. Casador's comment on special ed. We have heard our quarterly reports. I know we can't get into operations. I don't know at what point this board can assist the students of the county if special services doesn't have the resources they need, and it sounds like that may be happening. I don't know how to fix that. And I don't know how to do that without getting into operations or having a longer discussion back and forth during a quarterly report. But I'd like to see, I don't know, a response on what this is. And it doesn't have to be in an open meeting. It can be, a communication to me or to the trustees. I don't know. I've heard rumblings of this, nothing I can put my finger on. But nationwide, we know that special services are accelerating, the need for special services are accelerating. And it seems like we are behind the 8 ball at this point. I don't know how to fix that, but I'd love to be able to know how this board can support our students who are in turn supported by special services. So just throwing that out there for whatever it's worth.
All right, thank you. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, we'll move on to item 5.1, which is our superintendent's report.
Thanks. I will start out by responding to those things for you, saving me a lengthy email and while it's fresh in my mind. So regarding the overloaded caseloads of special education case managers, that is right in line with, as you know, with our class size reduction report for our district. They actually call it the Elko plan at the state level. I don't know if you knew that or not, because Elko has historically always had high class sizes. And so what I'm trying to point out here for one point of that is everybody's everything, whether it's the special education case managers, and I'm not trying to diminish the plight that they have, but I do want to point out that They have elevated the case levels. The classroom teachers have class sizes that are over what the state recommends. I think Stephen could probably go on for a while about the amount of work that the workers we have in his department have on their plate. And I could probably just go down the line for everybody and how much work is there for what we have. And that is obviously balanced against a budget that we have. And we have to be conscious of how we spend those funds. We're obviously not hiding money somewhere. We have a very transparent budget that Julie does a great job of filling us in on. And I think it's also something for our union leaderships to discuss as they think about and bargaining about compensation. Because every dollar we spend somewhere else means we can't spend it on a position, right? And so as we elevate salaries, which of course are super important, we're seeing them happen all across the state. It's how we hold on to people. But if a percent in negotiations represents nearly $1 million, we call that 10 positions in our district. And then weighing all of that against, we had 40 something vacancies that weren't filled, right? So that begs the question, if we did have the money, would we find those people to fill those positions? So what I want to point out is in almost none of these circumstances where people are having increased workloads, is that due to us saying, so sorry, we will not support you with that. We do have to make those decisions against our budget, but what you have entrusted me and our other leadership with to make sure we stay within budget. And that's a challenge. So trying to balance all those factors. I'm not making any excuses or anything, but I think just about everyone in our district could get up and talk about how, I mean, we heard it from the classroom teachers when it was part of, I think it was a major factor in your decision to move to a 4-day is because of how overworked they are and the burden that they have. And that hasn't changed with class sizes this year. So hopefully I don't come across as insensitive there, but that's the nature of what we're dealing with right now. And Matt, you're absolutely correct that this is a nationwide situation. And unfortunately, the universities in our state have admittedly said we are not keeping up with the need. So as we have students that have increased needs from a special education standpoint, the institutions that provide special education teachers are not giving us those graduates to a proportional degree. So it's a problem for sure. And so that's kind of my response to that one. As far as the concerned parent about the testing procedure we have here, something that's a process we necessarily have in place, because not that I would ever, I'm not speaking ill of that doctor, nor am I speaking ill of any doctor, but doctors, anyone can go to any doctor and request a specific diagnosis, and there's a decent chance they could come back with a diagnosis they're looking for based on what they're searching for. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not trying to malign anyone, but we see that from time to time, whether it's for employee leave or for other reasons, we get diagnosis. Furthermore, I did this part of her statement I very much disagree with, is that we have people who are not certified to make those judgments, and that is patently false. We have evaluators here at our district level who are not only certified to do that, but they are the educational experts to do that. And so while someone could provide us with a diagnosis of autism, for example, it would default to the educational expert who also makes those diagnoses on whether or not that is going to necessitate special education from a school standpoint. Not every child with autism has an IEP, and not every child with an IEP has autism, for example. So those determinations are made by the educational experts. And I do not doubt the ability of a doctor in this community to give a diagnosis of autism. But I'm positive that it is not that doctor's prerogative to say that that child then must have an IEP in our schools. That is a decision made by the very capable experts that we have in our special education department. So furthermore, as you saw, since we were talking about appeals today, the concept of going through another process is not required, but we are doing it just because there is that concern. And timelines for doing such a thing is a 45-day timeline between the first one and the next one. And we have not been in school that long. So you know that 45 days has not passed. We are still working on that, coupled with the explanation we got from Mr. Granillo earlier about how they're just scraping by to get everything done in a timely manner. So we are not non-compliant with that timeline. We're still working on that scenario. So I think I probably said all I need to about both of those public comments, and respectfully understand their plight and their situation. And she quoted me in my email response, and I stand by that email response. It would be extremely inappropriate, I think, for me to go in and say something about an IEP evaluation, given that I'm not the IEP professional. That we have people that do those things, and I would not subvert their authority or their decisions. So we have great people who do those things, and so sometimes we just disagree, and that's the scenario here. So. Right, so those are my responses to the public comments. And again, if any of you want to discuss anything individually further, I'm happy to give a little more insight and that sort of thing. I just want to touch real quick on again, the State Board of Education meeting that you mentioned a couple times, and really encourage, the burden isn't on you, Ashlee, it's on all of our students. Unfortunately, too often major things happen in education in our state, and many opportunities are made for people to give comment, and we're all just here in our worlds. I'm not going to say we're ignorant, but like, I'm the superintendent, and I only sometimes find out like a few days before these hearings and these meetings that, hey, they're looking for public comment on X thing. And so it's perfectly understandable that not everybody is aware of those things happening, but very significant as we're talking about the school start time thing. That's a major deal for our district, and decisions like that get made frequently, and notice is made for people to give comments, but they very frequently don't get comment except from the same tired voices from the NASB director, from the NAS membership. That's my organization's membership, from this. It's the same people over and over again, right? And so to your point, Ms. Dastrup, they want to hear from different people, and I think they want to hear from parents too. I think they want to hear from community organizations, because the trickle down effect of mandating when we can start school, especially when we've just added 45 minutes to our school day, and adjusted transportation schedules. We made a lot of changes to accommodate what the community wanted to do, and to make a change to start times would drastically change what the community wanted to do. And I think it would potentially require us to reconsider whether or not we would continue in a 4-day model or not, given the timelines that could be pushed. And I know that would be extremely problematic for all of us, and upset a lot of people. So we're going to do our best to let people know about the opportunity to make that comment. Right now, the next step, because the state board did move that on to the next stage, the next phase is to go to the Legislative Council Bureau for revision of draft language, and then it will go back to the state board after that. And so I will be sure to keep everyone well informed of when that next opportunity will be, so they can hear the voices of the communities and not just the educational experts, because why would those opinions matter? So that's that. Had a great visit with Abby Hillegrass. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but she's from Senator Mark Amadei, right? No, Assembly Congressman. Thank you. I knew I had it wrong when I said Senator, because it's the two ladies from Congressman Mark Amadei's office, and she's the rural representative from his office, and she came around here and asked us what sort of challenges we're facing, what the congressman can do for us, and it was great to have some representation from our elected officials come out to come all the way out here and spend some time with me, and I know she made her way around other county and city entities as well, so that our voices could be heard in his office. So appreciate that. And then a couple of partnerships we're working on, just so you know, working with the United Way of Northern Nevada and the Sierras, I think is what it's called. But they've received a lot of funding from this legislative session and from other donors, and they're working on something called the it already exists. It's called the Imagination Library, but they're pushing it out, and we're going to try to get it going in Elko here too, where kids like 0 to 3 or 0 to 4 get free books. And so it's not really our clientele, but they're going to be ours. And so we want to make sure that fits right in with our strategic plan actually too, with getting early childhood literacy, so that when kids get to us by kindergarten. So it's kind of like a subconscious effort of one of our strategic plan actions. So we're getting some progress there. Also developing a partnership with, or continuing the partnership with the Cook Center, who helped sponsor the Alex Boyer presentation. They're going to help us with conjunction with parentguidance.org and a whole series of mental health. You talked about parent, I don't remember what you called them, parent education sessions, that type of thing. Well, so we're working with them to have a whole initiative, which again ties in directly with our strategic plan. So we're making moves there, and we're looking forward to, I think we'll have something pretty soon actually going there. So we're going to continue to try to strengthen that partnership. And then 2 celebrations and thanks. So number 1, we had 3 additional schools this year that got to benefit from the addition from receiving books from Spread the Word Nevada. We have, I don't know how many schools at this point. I don't know if, do you know what the number is, Candace?
6.
Okay, we have 6 schools at this point now. We had 3 last year, I think, that started, and 3 this year. And they extended that to Sage, Mountain View, and Southside, and able to go to a couple of those opportunities, and saw Susan there at one of them as well. And that's all those kids got 5 free books that day. And for the rest of the school year, they'll continue to get a free book every month, and they'll continue to I got cut off. Too much talking, CJ. So really grateful to Spread the Word Nevada for the way they support our students and our in our push to better student literacy. And then the last one, which is, I guess, ironic because my mic just got cut off, is I'd like to recognize IT Professionals Day for our district IT staff. That's Mac, Charles, Stephen, Carl, both Joshes, Kong, Sarah, and RJ. We have 9 people who manage the digital and technological infrastructure for 10,000 students and 1,000 plus adults and everything that goes with it. And it's pretty amazing. These guys and gals are some of the most, I think, appreciated people in our school district. Anywhere they go, they're the hero. They fix things. They get you what you need. They come to the rescue when stuff doesn't work, as technology tends to do. So really appreciate them and want to recognize them on IT Professionals Day and thank them so much for all the hard work they put into keep things running for us. And that is the end of my report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson. And we've already had some questions for you. So unless anyone just speaks up real quick, we're going to go ahead and move on to.
A quick question.
Okay, yep, go
Quick
ahead,
request.
Josh. You spoke up quick.
So another stakeholder that supports our community, specifically our secondary, is local businesses. With where our economy is going, with where fundraising is going, I'm just requesting maybe where you brainstorm some sort of policy that would give businesses a heads up on major fundraising by some of these organizations, some of these, like, basketball team, the wrestling team, something where we have a heads up so that we can support as many teams as possible, as opposed to trying to getting the first come, first serve off of the table. I know my business in and of itself, we went with the first come, first serve model, and now we're at a point where we might not be able to support some other teams. And so if we can get the major fundraising that these teams and organizations are doing without limiting them from adding what they need down the future, that would be fantastic. So I'm just asking if you could do something to that extent.
Yeah, I'll talk with Paul and brainstorm, and we're meeting actually with all district admin tomorrow and admin council. So maybe that's a conversation we can have about improving communication, proactive communication about fundraisers so people can be selective in how they want to support our schools.
I do want to make it clear that it's not just my business, that it sounds like I'm like, oh, just me. I have been approached by other businesses, by other business owners. Hey, can we look into something? Whoa,
somebody move around.
Move around.
Turn the lights off on us.
Maybe not.
Oh.
Okay, let's just carry on.
Yeah, just to add.
Thank you.
There we go. That's all. Just that it's not my business. I have been approached by other business owners as far as like, hey, can we maybe work on a policy of some sort where we can get some heads up? That way we can help.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that feedback. I haven't heard from any businesses about that, but that's the beauty of having board members who are integrated within the community, is that you hear from different people than I might normally hear from. So it's great. Thank you.
Can I just a couple things real fast? Talking about the start time, maybe if it's possible to send out like a social media blast or something on our app just before that meeting again to say, hey, public comment, to get students and parents. Maybe they'll have more parent comment from our area. The last time I heard public comment, at least at the beginning, and nobody was from around our area. I mean, there were pros and cons too. And the other one, I don't know a lot about the Cook Center and the partnership you're talking about, but I know one of the goals is, parental partnerships and getting parents involved. And let's not forget our PTAs, who we have some very active, wonderful PTAs that I know would support whatever's happening as well. So let's not forget about them.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to item 6.1, approval of the accounts payable. Since our IT department is turning lights off and telling us it's time to finish up.
The building is spoken.
Move to approve the accounts payable.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, abstentions, or disclosures?
Have to disclose that I have a family member that works in one of these companies, so I'm abstaining from voting.
All right, thank you.
I'll disclose that I have a close relative working for Wells Rural Electric, but I will not be abstaining from voting.
All right, same as Brooke. Any others? Any other discussion or questions about the accounts payable? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and with one abstention, the motion carries. Item 7.1 is a final opportunity for input from the public.
For the record this time, Lee Hoffman. I really just stood up here to apologize because when I asked a question earlier, I didn't identify myself. So for the record, I was the one who asked the question earlier regarding the lawsuit. But while I'm up here, I know this is a nonpartisan board, but you're all interested in presidential election stuff, I'm sure. I just wanted to let you know that the County Republican Party is going to hold a debate watch party a week from tomorrow at the Senior Center, starting at 5:30, and we'd love to see any of you there who would like to attend.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who wishes to make a public comment? All right, seeing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for being with us.
What day was that on? Tomorrow, Wednesday the 27th.